What if I told you in 2016 the government stated that we pay EU institutions 9.286 billion a year? That's from the ONS, the Office of National Statistics. You might get in an argument with me, you might even bring up what Boris Johnson said on that big red bus.
Still with your arguments, one of them is on the side of this bus. We send 350 million to Europe. We don't, and you know we don't. No, we don't. You know we don't.
No,
Admit that figure is grotesquely misleading at best.
I won't.
You might even remember all the arguments put to us of how this was going to improve the economy.
Ridiculous report from some lobby group yesterday saying price of food will go up. It'll go down.
Our food bills would be lower, our energy costs would be lower, our tax bills would be lower.
Outside the EU, our food bills will be lower, our fuel bills will be cheaper, our taxes will be lower. I think people will be better off in terms of their household budget.
What I'm going to briefly show you is why that isn't the case, but also the reason for the damage in part is this promise. When you break down the figures and you include the rebate, we actually see that the amount that we were paying into the EU is much less than the 350 million that was claimed. In fact, it scales all the way down to quite a low amount of about 161 million at best guess estimate. So at the end of the video, I'm going to show you the actual figure of how much we're putting into the EU in 2020, as well as a few other figures that might shock you. And if you have any further doubts on this, here's Boris Johnson confirming that it is only 10 billion a year.
We send over £10 billion a year, we never see again.
In net terms, the real figure is 161.
If you take out the abatement and the money that comes back, the UK money that comes back via Brussels, the figure is obviously lower.
So first things first, we've got our divorce deal that we've got to pay off, because we owe the EU certain amounts of money, whether that's for pensions for staff that were hired in part because we were there, or other arrangements we made in regards to trade, or projects that we were part of, or research. So as part of that settlement, we're going to be paying back the EU 34 billion, which we'll never see again. In 2020, it says 10 billion from the OBR. I've seen other estimates suggesting it was about 15 billion. Then we have from 2021 to 28, another 18.9. And then finally, we're going to have net liabilities such as pensions, which are going to be paid up to 2064 for about 5.1 billion. Even the Express who's quite a right-wing newspaper, were expressing their shock, pun intended, as to how much the UK was going to pay over the divorce deal. 203 billion in total by 2020, plus that extra set of billion that I've just talked about, totaling somewhere in the region of about 34. We've only paid in 215 as part of the EU budget from 1973 to 2020. This is a huge cost and burden on the taxpayer that the British government never said during any of those interviews you saw earlier. We were also promised that trade was going to be really easy and that getting access into the EU would be advantageous to all of us.
Norwegian, Turkish. I think because Britain's economy is bigger than all of those economies combined, and because the French farmers, German car manufacturers sell 68 billion pounds more each year than we sell them, we're very well placed, and mutual self-interest suggests we'd cut a very good deal, and it's certainly not in the Europeans' interest to erect trade barriers.
Except it was, and it is, because like a golf club, you pay a membership fee, or you can pay to play, but of course that's going to be more expensive. For someone like a golf club, it's more in your interest to have a membership fee because that means you can regulate the amount of money that you've got coming in and you know where you stand. Whereas pay to play, it's fluctuating, it's less stable. What Dominic Raab is suggesting is that we would be able to waltz into that club as if we own the place because we're so rich. But he doesn't understand the basics of the EU. It's there to protect its members. And by allowing people to waltz in and take over and not pay a fee, it undermines the entire ethos of the EU. Just have a listen to the economist Adam Posen, a person that graduated from Harvard, also worked in Germany and England, as he absolutely destroys Raab's arguments in seconds.
Kohl, like Merkel now, is about German self-interest. They may like the automakers, they may like the ideal of Europe, and as David has argued, they view that as in Germany's enlightened self-interest. But they are not going to just roll over for this, that, or the other, as has been seen repeatedly throughout the European crisis.
He goes on to cite about the UK not joining the Euro exchange mechanism.
And Helmut Kohl was perfectly content to watch the UK go bye-bye. That was a call from John Major. He left the room. He came back in the room, and he's like, no, it's up to Britain. They want out, they get out. That was September 92, the exchange rate mechanism. So don't overdo the idea that Chancellor Merkel or the Germans or the Europeans are going to be cowed because a few German auto workers may be out of work. Remember, 18,000 employees is 1/20th of 1% of the German workforce.
So going back to the original point of why do I bring this up, essentially in business it's always better to buy in bulk and it's always better to be a member of something. The whole point of a membership or to buy in bulk is to reduce costs. By leaving the EU we have increased costs. And it's interesting as well because Adam makes a prediction about what is going to take place economically with Britain.
They're going to have higher inflation, lower purchasing power, weaker pound.
And his predictions have been quite chilling, both in terms of inflation going up, which we're all seeing, which means prices are going up, but also in our purchasing power going down. Pound has not recovered since the election for both dollar and the euro. And not being part of the EU means that our membership fee prices are actually increased from 9 billion to 14 billion. And we could see this through all the news stories coming through, as well as some decent research being done. Whether it's articles suggesting that small businesses are going to be paying an extra 180 million a year, to further research suggesting that actually this is going to cost even more, up to about 27 billion for UK firms. All because of this red tape that's suddenly been incurred, and instead of it coming from the government, it's now going on to businesses, which means they can't afford certain things like investment in training, investment in new facilities, because it's all going through tax. Tax that we cannot recoup, but also tax that's being spent on border controls and unnecessary red tape and forms that just drive people crazy. Or goods stuck at the border, which is only going to get worse with new EU regulations coming in July.
How long have you been waiting? How many hours?
It's not hours, it's days.
How many days?
4 days.
4 days you've been waiting here because of paperwork.
And unfortunately it doesn't end there in the problems that have been created in the cost of Brexit. If your town didn't vote Tory, there's a good chance you're not going to get those funds that were promised to you to replace the EU funds. As we can see, Sunak has offered £1 billion across the UK to help out difficult areas. But unlike the EU, it's going to Tory constituencies, so it's down to who you vote, not your level of poverty. Almost using a carrot and a stick situation to control the population to vote in favour of the party that's most likely to win, and not based around the economic need of the area or the fact that children in the area could be starving. And in front of you here are some of the projects that the EU invested in Port Talbot in order to try and boost the economy. HMRC even stated that in 2020 the government were paying institutions 15 billion a year still. It's always cheaper to buy in bulk. It is always cheaper to be a member than it is to pay as you play. It was never 350 million a week, it was 161 million. So we have less tax, less purchasing power, higher inflation, forced into a spending spree because of the promises made by Brexit. No wonder they've had to put a national insurance hike. There were no bonuses from Brexit, only costs to the taxpayer and driving people into poverty. With an added insult that the money was always there, they just never wanted to spend it. And that the Brexit bonus hasn't arrived yet because we're still paying into the EU. A big thank you to all of my patrons, and if you'd like to see your name up on here, click the Patreon link in the description. Once again, thanks for listening and bye for now.
I think we shouldn't have come out of Brexit. You know what I mean? I could be still sat here tomorrow. If there's one little niggly bit ain't right, and that's it.
Too much paperwork.
Yeah, that's right, it is.